go, and we are going to start this event stage. Alrighty, and we are live. Good morning, our planet. And we are here on the 14th. Is it the 14th? Yeah, it's the 14th of September. And we're going to be talking a little bit about AI art and also touching on some of the weekly news topics. You know, what happened, what do we need to catch up on, what do you need to know to get ready for what's coming, you know?
Yeah, I mean, on the in terms of where we're at in the UK, obviously the thing that's been dominating our news is the Queen's death, which has been everywhere. So I've been doing some digging around. I saw the Queenie NFT and got very annoyed for about 20 minutes until I realised that they'd released their last one and it was all like a memoriam thing, and they hadn't released an NFT collection.
Wait. I'm gonna need the story on this one.
Oh, this is great. So Blue, our resident news guy Hunter,
Mm-hmm.
dropped in the story about the Queenie's NFT, which I initially thought was an NFT collection that got dropped for the death of the Queen, and was immediately like, "Oh, this is the worst part of NFTs, is like the people exploiting stuff like this." But then realized that actually this has been a collection that's been running for a while, and they were just releasing like little pixel art iconic portraits of the Queen, which was really sweet. And then they released their last one and announced the end of the collection. And on their website is like a memoriam for the Queen and all this sort of stuff.
So this is something they've been doing.
Yeah, they've been doing it for a while. They were doing like little private auctions. I believe there's 76 or 79 of them. But they're just cute little bits of like iconic outfits of the Queen. My favorite one being the one of her like with a coat draped over her head. I'm not sure if you guys would have seen it, but it was like the Queen spotted in almost like casual dress sort of thing, which is one of the legendaries in the collection, which is quite funny.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, contextually, the whole news cycle right now is really strange. I mean, like, at least personally, like, I mean, she's, of course, been around for both our lives so far and multiple people's lives. It's like, it was almost kind of like a break in reality when it actually happened. Is like, is this actually happening? And of course, it's real that, you know, people's lifespans have an end, right? Yeah. It was just kind of inconceivable.
Yeah, it still isn't like my grandmother has only ever known one monarch in her life. My grandmother, it's always been the Queen. She is early 60s.
Wow.
So yeah, it's like I don't want to drop a real age, otherwise she might come get me. But she's she was encouraging me to go off to Edinburgh and see it, but unfortunately my lecture scheduling for university and everything just didn't work out, and I didn't get to go and see like the procession and everything. But apparently it was like beautiful.
Wow. Yeah, let's get right into it then. Of course, like, I guess that's how your news cycle's been dominated over here in the States. It's mostly, I think, a little bit quieter, though. On the financial market side, we've definitely seen some turmoil in the last like 24 or so hours. We were chatting a little bit about this before we started this cast, but I mean, my general measure for fear is just by looking at the volatility index, you know, the VIX. And honestly, it's like, was a ton of value like wiped out from the markets in the last 24 hours? Yeah, but the volatility index, this looks normal, honestly. Like, I don't think we're in like, oh no, the world's on fire territory. It's just like cyclical pain at this point.
Yeah, I saw that. I obviously the first piece of news that I saw was like the most fear-mongering article you could see, and it's like 1.6 trillion or something of value wiped out of the markets, and I was like, wow, that's kind of scary. And then like did a little research, I looked at the fear index, I was like, oh.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like
just in a recession.
You got to remember how like some of the goals of these voices that are speaking, right? When it's coming out from a publication that makes money from clicks, they want you to click on an article, and typically people react pretty well to fear when it comes down to that sort of engagement, right? It's like that's typically why our news cycles are dominated by so much bad news rather than good news.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think that's a great message to like give everybody on the space as well. Like, just because everyone's saying it's bad news, do your own research. Don't panic.
Yeah, I mean, just like it's like, so I mean, in general chat we were talking about this a little bit yesterday as well, is that apathy is bad, right? Where we just kind of accept what's going on, and it's like, it's another day, then the world's on fire, right? But at the same time, it's like we can't get demotivated about it. We still need to look at things rationally. And how do I put this? It's like this normalized fear can't stop us from like building. It can't stop us from moving forward. It can't stop us from doing what needs to be done, right? We can recognize when there's definitely a significant event that happens and we need to address this immediately. Like the house is literally on fire. We need to pour water on it, right? And then there is the nature of the complex, which is what we're dealing with right now, where we have persistently high inflation and all these other things. It's like, I'm not going to candy coat it and say that life is not difficult right now. It is. But it doesn't continue on forever, and it doesn't stop people from trying to make this place better than it was yesterday.
Yeah, and like the house will still be here. Like after all these, like all this terrible news, and like you said, the nature of things gets better, because it will get better. These things operate on cycles. It will get easier again. And we're just like here. We're just trying to focus on building out our planet, building out our ecosystem, building out our utility, which you guys can hear more about on our town hall tomorrow, I believe it is, same time. But yeah, you have to acknowledge things you can't change, and keep moving on.
Keep on. And the only thing I can say, if I can just add 2 seconds on that, is I think you need to have some flexibility and agility, right? Like with what's going on in the market forces, because it changes absolutely everything. It changes your use of proceeds, cost of capital, changes how much liquidity you might have, just access, to a market entrance, how many people are, even eyeballing your NFT project at this time. And I think the best thing that you can do when you're having these catastrophic market moments is you need to protect what you have. You need to refine your focus and on the highest earning, highest return, highest value driving activities. I think it's when a lot of businesses or platforms try to do too much in times like this is when they fault. And so it's really go insular, go tight, and get focused, and really just watch your budgets and watch your capital spend and do things smart and efficiently. And if you can withstand these really shitty times, it's those that kind of emerge, I think, as like market darlings when times get great, because you've been able to kind of incubate and build in a tough environment. And so, yeah, it's just really kind of leaning on some of the expertise of the team. Do they know how to handle something like this? Do they know how to refine their plans and their roadmaps in a time like this?
Oh yeah, most definitely. And also, since we started the recording literally right after Ash got in here, if you don't know, Ash is in here as well. Say hi, Ash.
Yeah, I couldn't stay in the audience too long. Hi, everyone. One of the co-founders of Our Planet, letting Kieran and Warren here final sites until Billy run this, but I'll jump in and out, and would love people to raise their hands and ask questions if they want to come up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think we've gotten used to doing this a bit too much, Ron. Just in case you guys are new to this and you haven't joined in before, I'm Kieran. I'm a management student at University of St Andrews, and I'm part of the community building team on Our Planet.
And I'm Warren, the community manager for Our Planet. So I'm in around. I'm always there. I'm always watching. And yes, I do see y'all's tickets. We're gonna cover some of that in the town hall tomorrow.
Yes, keep your ears to the ground for that. But yeah, with the new cover on, let's get into the topic that we've jumped on this week, which is AI art, which I've been quite excited to talk about because I've seen rumblings for a while, like I don't know, Dolly is that the way to say it?
Yeah, I think it's like doll.e, so it's Dolly. Yeah, it's very similar, kind of like Wally, That movie.
Yeah,
was
that's what I was trying to do to describe it to my grandmother the other day, which was fun. She's like, "So it's art made by machines?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah, essentially,
Kind
right?
of.
Like, I mean, like the internet and Twitter in general kind of fell in love with Dolly. Let's say it was like the meme cycle for about the last month or so, month, 2 months, somewhere around that area, right? And people getting into it, and it would just make these horrific wax-like approximations of people.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember when it was doing rounds, but before that, I don't know if you saw this, but I like to keep tabs on like the animation industry and all
Mm-hmm.
this sort of thing. And there was for a while going on YouTube, people were taking like older animated shows or like animated scenes that were really popular, and they were making them 4K. I sense like with
Oh
air
yeah,
quotes, because most of the time
upscaling.
they were yeah, they were upscaling them and increasing their frame rate.
Yeah, frame
Which,
interpolation.
yeah, that's the one. And I don't know if you know this, but like a lot of animators not constantly, sorry, consciously choose the frame rate they operate in. It's like they can operate off like.
I could talk on this topic for hours. I know also, like, what was it during there's like a kind of a PSA that was put up by Tom Cruise and the director that worked on the new Top Gun, right? About basically,
Yeah.
hey, if you're going to be watching this movie at home, turn off the smoothing and frame interpolation on your TVs, because we meant for this thing to be seen at like 24 frames. You know, that's cinema, right? Cinema is typically shot at about 24. It was a while back, you know, I'm kind of showing my age here, but Peter Jackson caught a little bit of flack when it for the Hobbit series. He decided to do like a high frame rate release of it, and instead of the typical 24, it was released in 48. And the thing is, some people can't tell, but if you've got like an eye for movies, you can definitely tell. Like film is typically at 24. I think television is typically around like 30 or so. And of course, if you're a gamer, you want as many frames as you can get.
Yeah, I think the best example, and also like the worst moment of this, because we're getting into a little bit of like the controversy that surrounds this.
Mm-hmm.
I saw lots of artists complaining about like I'd like people sat on like YouTube talks or podcasts talking about like, I make my animations in this way, and when people use the what was it you called it, frame
interpolation.
Frame interpolation, that was it. It sort of ruins it, because you have like blur frames and things like that, where if AI tries to fill it in, it will create this one frame that is a horrific monstrosity between like the standard animation style and this one blur frame that they've put in there to try and like create the emotion behind the movement.
I mean, Kieran,
and one of the worst examples.
Are you a fan of anime at all?
So, like sometimes I've watched it with friends. I've never really gotten into like the space as a whole. But,
Well, so recently, right? Like literally just the other day, Cyberpunk Edgerunners came out on Netflix. I binged the whole thing in one day. Absolutely fantastic. The game launch that it's based on, that was a little bit in rough waters, right? But it seems like, at least on Rotten Tomatoes, people love this thing. It's absolutely fantastic, right? But so the story about how it links back to everything is the studio that's behind it, you know, Studio Trigger. The way that they do animation is like they do like hyper deformation of its objects to express motion, right? And the issue is when you try to frame interpolate that, it's not meant to be smooth. It's meant to convey speed through geometry. I mean, it's like, this sounds bizarre if you've never seen any of their work, right? But once you watch it, you get it. But the issue is that if you were to feed something like this into frame interpolation, not everything needs to be made smooth. Not all the blanks need to be filled in. It's the same idea that in like a piece of music, that when you have a spot of silence, right? That spot of silence helps define the notes that are, you know, its bookends.
Yeah, exactly. And what the frame interpolation does is, since it's an outlier, in terms of like the style of the animation, it warps the in-between frame when it's again with air quotes, increasing the frame rate. It's actually just sort of damaging the art form. So there was, before like DALL-E and like before that was actually making competent art, you had this initial wave of criticism of AI art because people were upscaling animated works and basically ruining the creative direction that directors had put into that. The worst way I personally saw this done was with Into the Spider-Verse, which deliberately changed between its frame rates. Yeah, exactly. You already know it deliberately changed between its frame rates.
No, I absolutely cannot like get behind that. It's like, I adored that movie. I saw that movie in theaters twice, right? And that's how it gets its weight to its motion, is that it's deliberate, right? Like, like animation has evolved massively over, like, let's say the last it's probably close to 40-50 years, something plus from that, right? It's that I don't know, have you seen any like the Disney classics like Snow White or something like that?
I'm not that old. I'm not that young. Yeah, of course. I've seen like Snow White, Cinderella. Like, I think, like, yeah, you still put Hercules as a classic and all that sort of stuff. Personal favorite.
So I mean, that's a little bit how like it changed around. It's like all those classics, those cell animated classics like Snow White and stuff like that. When they animated that, and you know, this is before like computers were like a giant thing, right? They drew every single frame. That's why if you look at the older movies, they look like they have this weird smoothness to them, right? They didn't believe in like the cadence of frames, right? But when like the Japanese animation business, when they were kind of inspired by Disney, but because of like budgetary constraints and also the way that they did it, they were more on the syndication path, right? They still had films, but when it went more into like television and other things where you need to turn out like an animated episode like every single week in order to convey motion and also get to, you know, hit these production deadlines, they did frame rate interpolation. Well, not interpolation, but well, what is it? I can't really find the word for it, but it's basically like some scenes, like what you were saying for Spider-Verse, where some scenes would be like animated on 4s, while the other ones would be animated at 8s. So then you would have this different kind of rhythm of motion in between everything, right? And that's basically how more modern productions have come forth. And it's even changed now more because we do have frame interpolation. We can either hire manual, like in between artists, or we can have certain things that are computer generated. Like there's also the fact that some 2D animated stuff, it's actually made using 3D rigs and then drawn on top of those for guides.
Yeah, and here's where you're seeing like the real use of this sort of stuff. It can be used to basically help artists as long as it's built for that. And what tends to be the way that people are getting bent out of shape about it in terms of this specific use of art, we're going to get into the like DALL-E stuff later, is that it damages the art form. But if you build it around like assisting its creation, you can make it so much more efficient. And it is
it is a tool. It is intended to be used as a tool, like it kind of like an ingredient to the whole thing, but not actually the whole thing. Is the idea, right?
Yeah, and that's where we start to get the issues coming out with DALL-E. So it's gotten really, really good. I don't know if you've seen like the stuff for like DALL-E 2 on their on their website, but it's like
DALL-E 2 is like massively improved. But the thing is, there's actually another contender in there. So I think we were talking about this last week, was that article about I think a person winning an art contest by submitting AI art, right? And you're thinking it's like, there's no way that DALL-E's capable about this. And I don't think that they actually used DALL-E. It was, I brought it up here. It was, Stable Diffusion, right? So Stable Diffusion is, you can run it actually locally on your machine. It's not like a machine learning thing. It is machine learning. But the issue is, instead of like connecting to a vast network, they've put this thing onto your own local computer. If you have like a graphics card that's like strong enough to run this thing, it has to be pretty strong. There has to be like a fairly large amount of memory on this thing. Then you can just run this on your own. You give this program like text prompts, and it's already been like seeded with, I think it's like a 10 gig file or something like that, or possibly more. No,
Wow.
It could be quite larger than that, but it's a hyper compressed file, right? Of like tons and tons of images that it views as the backbone of art on the internet. So once you feed this in, it's basically how it learns the language, and then you train it saying, I want this and I want that, right?
Yeah.
Because these things are based off of neural nets.
Yeah. It's like same as any AI. Like you give it stimulus, give it training, and then it learns to spit it out. And they've just gotten like notably good at it recently, which is obviously like you had the contest winner. And that's caused a little bit of a stir in the industry, because you've got, first of all, art sharing platforms trying to ban AI art, and artists like disliking the fact that it exists, obviously, because it like devalues their skills, or like in some cases trivializes their skills.
I mean, to my understanding about that particular article, that person was completely transparent, and the category that they entered in was, completely legit, right? They could enter in computer generated art and other stuff into there, like, art made using algorithms, right? That was totally game. So they were not breaking any rules, but the thing is, I think the impression that was going around online was that this person was taking away prizing or recognition from artists that only either did it by hand or did it digitally or however so. But, basically not using the press of a button to generate art.
Yeah. And this this whole thing has then caused another debate that I've been having a look through, mainly on Twitter, which is the data set that these programs are using is obviously using art that is made by like
humans.
Artists online.
Yeah. That, of course, also have not given their consent. But I mean, here's the point.
That's the problem.
Is like, I'm sure that if you've ever, like, there are artists in our community, right? And I have a lot of friends that are artists, but let's be entirely honest, it's not like creativity comes from a vacuum. You take reference from one thing or another, and we have to have this conversation of this, like, does this go too far, right? It's like,
yeah,
because like via proper neural net like learning, the stable diffusion, it's capable of replicating someone's artistic style in like a matter of moments, right? But this isn't to say it's impossible for people in the traditional art sense either.
Yeah, I'm not even sure. Like I said, I did a lot of digging, but I don't really know where it sort of falls on like the ethicality either. Because if you make art and you post it on the internet that hasn't been commissioned, you've sort of released it into the public sphere. Obviously, when somebody's using your art, you want to be credited. It depends on like how your specific like monetization model works. But if it's out there, if it's online, I think maybe it is fine for it to be used as like this data set thing. I realize like.
I mean, essentially what you're saying is that when you put something online, you also want it to be seen, right? But we're coming to this state where, my art can be seen by an algorithmic program and then used to create art that's similar to mine in one way, or maybe that my art is contributing in some way to something that I did not intend. And that is just the nature of presenting yourself on the internet, right? I mean, let's take it in another frame, right? It's like, let's say you say something dumb on Twitter, right? You didn't intend for it to be dumb, right? But then suddenly, some people catch wind of it. They completely misconstrued your original meaning. What's more important here, your original intent in your brain, or what people make of it?
I mean, this is the thing with That's like death of the author, death of the author theory.
Yeah, it's entirely that.
And then beyond that, again, we have like nothing's original. Like again, like if we stick with writing here, nothing's original. It's all just the Bible. It's all just the hero's journey. It's all just like a psychological way of expressing ideas. Which like you can look through the hero's journey. You can look through like there's been papers written on this by people much smarter than I am.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to have a look at it, like feel free. But when it comes down to it, the AI is basically doing something that's actually really useful. Like if you see a picture and you're like, I wish it was slightly different, you can even feed that into DALL-E. It just tweaks it slightly. You give it an image, it'll give you similar images. It's crazy. Like the stuff while I was looking to it, because I've known it's existed. I've sort of been on the fringes of it for a while, but this gave me an excuse to really deep dive into it, and it's nuts the stuff this thing can do.
Yeah, I mean, like honestly, personally, I'm a little bit more on the positive side, and I think some of the backlash is a little bit.
I think I am too.
I think it's a little bit overblown, right? Because here's the thing.
But it's about like defending your skills, isn't it? It's like imagine if something you dedicated your whole life to is something like, a machine can do it for you. Bye.
Well, no. Here's the thing. It comes from 2 points, right? And the death of the offer stance is definitely weighs a lot into it. So here's number one: is that in my firm belief is that all humans, in one way or another, are creative, right? We have things that we want to express and be seen, but here's the difference between like anybody else and a trained artist. It's that the trained artist has trained over a insane amount of time to be able to express the ideas in their head accurately. So what goes in between brain to hand or whatever other medium is as seamless as possible for them, right? But for us that don't have training, we still have ideas, we still have dreams and all that, but we might not be able to put them onto paper. And what some of these like AI tools might allow us to do is to get an approximation that's close to that point, What?
Yeah, totally. This is the reason I'm really behind it, because if you give me a pencil, I can't draw. You'd have better luck giving it to one of those, like those Etch-a-Sketch machines that's just like basically a pathing AI that's just randomized. Like I'm hopeless in terms of art.
Let's also be clear here.
I have some good ideas.
Like,
go on.
While this AI art, these generative engines are capable of making something that could look like a full finished published artwork, right? They're never going to design anything new.
I think that sort of depends on how you view like derivative based works, because like art based on another piece of art is still like its own unique piece.
No, it is, right? It completely is, but the argument point is that an artist, right, when they're in the most manual control of what they want to create with the most finite detail, they're still going to be able to take it further than, because the thing is, that's what AI generative art is. It's still going to be an approximation.
Yeah, it will never have its own like unique way of expressing ideas. It may stumble upon them if it's like different if it's taking two ideas and mixing them, but it won't have any creative ways of expressing, at least not in the form that DALL-E, which I'm just using as like the go-to example, currently takes. Like it won't do anything unique.
Yeah, it's like, so here's in the short is that I believe for projects that might not have a high demand on the art side, it's like these tools are going to be useful for them if they can properly train these algorithms. That might be a thing, right? But for artists that are still seeking to create something of their own and who have created their own unique style of sorts, I think they're still going to find work, and people are still going to recognize the fact of that's what a fully intentional human being is capable of producing. Like, I do not think we are in this like hyper danger territory, but the genie has definitely been, taken out of the bottle here.
Yeah, I think that's what I see with it as well. Like, it's an incredible tool, but also like it's pretty game changing in terms of like the creative sphere. I can tell that, and I'm minimally involved. Yeah, so there's some to like summarize. There's some like debate going on like data set ownership, and there's a bit of a consensus on platforms like DeviantArt to sort of push that sort of AI generated art away and like avoid giving it engagement, avoid getting it like to the front page, all this sort of stuff. But do we have any questions in the community? Do you guys where do you guys stand on this? Do you think this is something that should be open and accessible to all? Should we limit our use of it? Do you think it's dangerous? Like, where do you stand with it?
Yeah, I mean, it is an insanely kind of complex issue as we move forward with technology like this. It's the same reason. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, we got one in. So
yeah, come on in.
So I'll just give you permissions in. Here we are, mate.
Hello.
Oh, there we are. Hello, mate.
Yeah, I'm a painter myself, and with the AI art, like the biggest problem I see, like you said, the genie has been out of the bottle, and like people has been actually. What happens is like every art form, like when people get interested in art, usually artists get more chance to do artwork as well. And most of the working artists know it. The biggest two problems is that one, the style stealing, because like when an artist becomes a major name, their value stems from the supply that the artist can provide. For example, if Craig Mullins, for example, when he is creating something, its value per piece stems from the fact that he can paint maybe 40 paintings a year. But once you can saturate the market with his style with AI, his value will drop significantly, because like you see his kind of work everywhere, and it will be like a commodity. That's one problem artists are facing. Second problem is that artistic training takes such a long time. But it's like I went to art school. I graduated from art school in 2018, and I am still improving. And through this, you always get small tasks, because most of the like high-paying good jobs are taken by the working artist who has been in the industry for quite a while. But with the development of AI, those jobs are disappearing. So when you are a graduate, you are not ready to handle stuff. Just consider this. Like, if you are a program developer, you graduated from your job, and now the only job you can get is like operating system programming, because the rest of it is handled by computers themselves. So there is no more steps. There will no more be steps for artists to train themselves along the way.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I
fear.
think a huge danger of this is basically just putting us in a position, putting artists in a position where they can't really get any jobs anymore because it's all done by AI. Which is like, that's the worst case scenario here, is like destroying an entire industry of creatives. That's the looming.
Yeah, that is definitely the most fearful / dystopian take on it. At least personally, I believe that there's still going to be room for artists to have their work, published that's done by human hand, right? Because it's like, you can say that there's going to be all these derivatives that are made out of in an AI generative sense, but it's the kind of the same idea that we have with NFTs, in that, oh, well, I own the NFT, and then someone just right clicks and saves it, right? But The
Yeah,
difference.
but the thing is, sorry.
No, go
the
ahead,
the
go ahead.
big problem in this sense is this. For example, for a movie, like hundreds of artists work,
Mm-hmm.
but if you put the middle, like if you start using AI for a lot of, because you can do it for a lot of artists,
Mm-hmm.
what you will employ is like 5 art directors that will be like writing prompts and like painting over stuff.
Yeah, essentially, they're going to be
So yeah.
using AI for a lot of the concept work.
Yeah, so right now we have like really good artists who will do the art direction, but over time, if you don't employ those 95 people, because that's the thing, like you graduate from art school, and in this current situation, if 100 people graduate from art school, 5 or 6 continues to paint after 5 years.
Yeah,
That's the
that is harshly nightmarish right there.
Yeah, so if after that you also get like those skills, like, so maybe people will, like, some people will keep it aside for years to master the skill and then start working at summer. That's why the artists are like creating a fuss about it, because middle, like mid-tier or below artists cannot say anything about it. They don't have a voice on the internet actually. That's why the industry leaders are talking about it, because everybody remembers how it was when they were starting out. Everybody worked like 10 to 15 years on like weird projects, etc. Like you do weird, you you cannot even think like the weird stuff you do along the way. So all of them are big are going for AI stuff. But I personally believe digital art will lose lots of things, but traditional art will improve, because that's what happens all the time. With NFTs, for example, I do oil painting as well, and my digital painting clients didn't increase that much, but my oil painting
Increased?
clients increased. Yeah, through, because when people get like NFTs and like get interested into some kind of art, then they want some traditional art, because everybody feels like, yeah, digital art is like not art, but traditional art is. So they move on to traditional art.
I think that's
My
just
two
kind of the
cents.
perception of the market, right? It's like when it becomes
Yeah,
oversaturated with one thing, then people automatically say, "Oh, well, the thing that there's not as much of, that's better." Well, it's not entirely true, but that is how people feel, right?
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe it comes down to like this is just a shiny new toy, and it'll find its use in like the professional world, and then will die down, because really what we look for when we look into art is we want to see an individual's interpretation of a thing, or a message that they're trying to convey. And what DALL-E isn't really doing is not doing that. It's just creating new images. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Library of Babel,
No.
which is it's a weird website. It's basically every possible string of characters organized into books, and theoretically you can find every single work ever written, and including works that won't ever be written. But obviously there's quadrillions of pieces in there, and you'll never go through all of them. And there's, based off the same idea, there's one of, I think it's 126 by 126 pixels, or maybe more, I'm not sure. It's every possible color combination, which theoretically can then produce any artwork you've ever seen, and any artwork that will ever be created. And what DALL-E is essentially doing is it's filtering through those and going like, this stuff makes sense, this stuff doesn't. So it won't really have any new ideas. And that's where like the creative community will always hold out. Is it's
So you're arguing to the
the
point that
heart and
it's
soul of creative.
what this stuff is doing is actually more so curation rather than creation.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm trying to get at. Is it will never beat the human creative minds.
Yeah, I mean that is also one of my large concerns. As a, is it pronounced Yijit?
It's called Yeet.
Yeet. That is a
Yeah,
good
it's
thing
like
to learn.
Yeet. Yeah, thank you.
So like Yeet was saying, about this, like people being discouraged to enter the art field, is that I really hope that people don't get discouraged. I understand that against kind of these insurmountable odds, it's easy to, but there's still room for creatives. There is still like value in work that is done by hand, and I think that people should realize very quickly that what these AI tools, while they can make images that are like fairly stunning, the thing is it's just another tool. It's just another brush, and it's still up to a human hand to like make decisions about what it should be, right? So I would rather prefer that these tools be used to accelerate the process and not passed off as the final product. And I'm pretty sure that with enough iterations, that society as a whole is also going to train themselves in some way to be able to tell the difference. I'm hoping for art literacy here.
Yeah, I actually hope for that as well. I also the other day I talk around with people a lot, like in Istanbul, the creative community is well, like the scientific and creative community are well connected with each other. And there was this professor who was talking that they didn't research about art yet, like visual art,
Mm.
but they research about music and you know the computer generated music,
Mm.
and our brains react differently to computer generated music than like actual human created music, and
Really?
both of them are played digitally. Yeah, when people know that it's another human being, our empathy modules in our brain, like the regions that does the empathy stuff, like gets activated. But when you know that it is just a computer generated thing, you don't feel empathetic about it. And we in visual art is even more important to feel empathetic about it.
Hmm.
So there is some hope. Like,
So what you're telling me is that humans, in a way, have a built-in Turing test that we can kind of tell these things.
the thing is, we don't know. Like, if they have to tell people that this is computer generated and this is human generated,
Huh.
because they didn't do it with musicians. Their ears weren't trained well enough to consider. Right now, AI generated art, like for a trained eye, it's obvious that they are different, but people cannot tell still. If you don't tell them, like you can pass it as your own art.
Wow.
So yeah, and I talk with lots of art directors and like game designers, etc. And it already started, and it will go bigger and bigger. So most of the commercial art is going towards AI. If we like, if there are no legal complications, most of the jobs in game entertainment sector is going to AI. So for the artists, it was always more profitable, to be honest, to create your own IP anyway, create your
Mm-hmm.
own stuff instead of doing stuff. So if somebody here is thinking about delving into art, they should consider that, like, because studio life isn't that nice anyway, like working in a
Oh
studio,
yeah,
like
yeah.
studio.
I've recently had lunch with a buddy of mine that works in like in a A game studio, and it's like it's work. I mean, he's passionate about it. He loves what he does, but at the same time, it's like it is the grind of the machine, you know?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And they are all like most of them are really depressed. The like because like I tell you, I worked with a lot with as a freelancer, and once you do like I don't know 17th revision on something that you think it was really perfect on the third revision,
Yeah.
it's like soul crunching now. Like,
It is a little bit
you
like
know?
that, right? Because it's like
Yeah, it is like that.
it is your clients that you have is that they're always going to be the point. It's like, oh, this could be better, but they don't see the in-between process of how much work it takes to get from one to the next.
Yeah, it depends
Yeah,
on
there's
the
not
client.
much appreciation, is there?
Yeah.
Yeah, some clients like treat you like a robot anyway. Like you are their dolly.
Mm-hmm. That client work.
And also like there is a running gag around art community that like, man, if I get the prompts Dali gets, I will create awesome stuff, because most of the stuff we get from clients is like, yeah, I want something like that vaguely. You paint and I will see. Like,
wow.
so
Yeah,
I
there's too
sincerely
much of
hope.
that in the industry.
Yeah, probably it will teach people also how to. That's my positive attitude towards Dali and Midjourney. Like maybe it will teach clients to order painters to do something like in a really detailed way. So
Oh yeah, when
it
they
is,
get frustrated enough with the tool, that's like, I'm just gonna get someone else to do this.
yeah, exactly.
We can hope. But yeah, thank you for coming on and sharing your story on this
Thank you
whole
for
topic.
giving me.
I think this has been like a really interesting discussion topic for all of us today. But I think that brings about our talk to a close today, actually. And next week we're gonna be approaching more like generalized market things, unless the community here they have some sort of topic that they want to hear about. We're about the kind of intersection of both like purpose/profit, technology meeting values. So if you guys have any ideas, feel free to put them into event chat. We're always looking at that. And thank you for tuning in, and thanks for everybody being here.
Okay, guys. Great talking.
Cheers.
Thank you.